Let's be honest. The balance jig is probably the most overrated and misunderstood lure in your entire ice fishing tackle box. You see guys pulling up monsters on them. You read the articles, you watch the videos, and then you go out, tie one on, and get nothing. Not a single bite. What gives? Today, we're not just talking about how to use a balance jig. We're talking about why it's failing you specifically. I'm going to show you the subtle, almost invisible mistakes that 99% of frustrated anglers make. And I promise, by the end of this, you'll see this lure in a completely new light. It has nothing to do with the color you're using, and it's not because the fish just aren't biting. So let me ask you this right now. Do you believe the balance jig is a magic lure, or is it just hype? Drop your answer in the comments before we get started. The balance jig has been a winter staple for decades. It's designed to perfectly imitate a dying minnow, darting and gliding erratically in a circle under the ice. It's a proven fish catcher for walleye, perch, trout, you name it. The common wisdom is simple. Drop it down, give it a sharp lift of about a foot or two, and let it fall on a slack line. Repeat. Everyone does this. We've all been taught this 1-2 rhythm. We see our buddies do it. It seems so simple, right? But that's the trap. Because it looks so simple, we assume we're doing it right. When it doesn't work, we blame the lure. We blame the weather. We blame the fishing spot. Anything but our own technique. We've been doing the same exact thing for years, expecting a different result, and that's the very definition of insanity, especially in fishing. All right, let's get into the first and biggest mistake. You're a puppeteer, not a jackhammer. Picture this. You're on the ice, it's cold, and you're anxious to get a bite. So you grab your rod, and you start ripping that lure up and down with all your might. You're creating a violent, spastic motion. In your mind, you're making a lot of action. You're calling fish in from miles away. But what does a fish actually see? It sees something unnatural, something that's having a seizure. A real dying minnow doesn't act like that. It flutters, it glides weakly, it pauses. Your job is to be the puppeteer making that lure look like an easy, dying meal. It's not about how hard or fast you can jig. It's about subtlety. The aggression in your jigging motion is probably the #1 reason fish approach your lure, look at it, and then swim away in disgust. They're predators, but they're not stupid. They know that's not how food behaves. Next time you drop that jig, think less about brute force and more about finesse. You are trying to trick a wild animal, not start a lawnmower. Now let's break down that motion. We're often told to give the lure a sharp lift. But that word is a lie. The word lift makes you think of a straight vertical pull. This is wrong. It shouldn't be a violent rip or a jerk. It should be a smooth, accelerating sweep of the rod tip. Think about skipping a stone across the water. You don't just throw it straight down. You use a smooth, sweeping motion to get it to glide. It's the same principle here. Your goal with the upward sweep is to load the lure with energy so it can glide outwards and begin its circular pattern. A hard, vertical jerk just makes it jump up and fall straight back down. It never gets a chance to balance and swim. A good starting point is a smooth lift of about 1 or 2 feet. The lure should feel like it's swimming up, not being yanked. This single change, from a jerk to a sweep, can completely transform the lure's action from an unnatural jump to a seductive glide. So you've done the perfect sweep, and the lure is gliding. What comes next? The most important part of the entire presentation is nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's the pause. After the lift, the lure glides out, turns and glides back to center. During this entire fall and glide, you need to do nothing. Let it complete its journey. Then, once it has settled back to the center, you pause. For how long? Longer than you think is necessary. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, sometimes even 30 seconds. This is where 90% of your bites will happen. The fish are drawn in by the motion of the glide, but they commit to striking when the lure hangs there, looking like a stunned and helpless minnow. Most anglers are way too impatient. They do their lift, the lure falls, and before it even has a chance to settle, they're already ripping it up for the next jig. You're not giving the fish a window to eat. It's like you're pulling the plate away just as they're about to take a bite. The pause is a mental game you have to win. Let's talk about your gear, because your rod might be actively sabotaging you. Many ice fishermen, especially those who target big walleye, tend to use heavy, stiff rods. They think they need that backbone for a good hook set. While that's true to an extent, a rod that's too stiff, like a pool cue, is a balance jig killer. It offers no forgiveness. When you do that upward sweep, a stiff rod transfers all that energy too abruptly, causing the lure to jump instead of glide. You need a rod with a fast or extra fast action, but with a sensitive, slightly softer tip. That tip will load on the upsweep, like a tiny catapult, and then release that energy smoothly, launching the lure into its glide. It also helps in bite detection. When a fish bites on the fall, it often just feels like a little bit of weight or a tick. A stiff rod won't transmit that subtle feeling. So, if you're using your heavy-duty pike rod for balance jigs, you're doing it wrong. You need a dedicated stick that's designed for this kind of presentation. Next up is the invisible enemy, your fishing line. Your line is not just a connection to the lure, it's an anchor. If you're using thick, heavy fluorocarbon or monofilament, you are killing the lure's action. Think about it. The balance jig is designed to be lightweight and glide freely. Heavy line is stiff and has memory. As the lure tries to glide outwards, that heavy line acts like a rope, creating drag and pulling it straight back down. It creates a pendulum effect instead of a free-swimming glide. The solution is to use a lighter line. A 6 or 8 pound test line is often more than enough, especially one of the modern, thin-diameter copolymer or fluorocarbon lines designed for ice fishing. Some anglers even prefer to use a super-thin braided line as their main line with a short fluorocarbon leader. This gives you maximum sensitivity from the no-stretch braid and the invisibility of the fluoro near the lure. The difference in the lure's glide between a 12-pound test and a 6-pound test line is night and day. Have you ever noticed your lure just spinning in place? You're jigging away, but it's not darting out. It's just twisting. This is the death spiral, and it's caused by line twist. It's a subtle problem that builds up over time and completely neutralizes your lure. Every time you lift and drop the jig, especially if you're a bit too aggressive, you can introduce a tiny amount of twist into your line. After 50 or 100 jigs, that twist accumulates. The line wants to unspin, and it forces your lure to spin with it. Instead of gliding, it just pirouettes in place, which looks completely unnatural to a fish. It's easy to check for. Just lift your lure out of the water and let it hang. If it starts spinning like a top, you have a problem. To fix it, you can let out a long length of line and drag it behind you as you walk, or simply cut the lure off and let the line untwist before tying it on again. Pay attention to this. It's a silent killer of a good presentation. Okay, this next one is so simple, but so many people get it wrong. Let's talk about your knot. How are you tying the balance jig to your line? If you're like most people, you're probably using a standard clinch knot or Palomar knot, and you're cinching it down tight against the eye of the lure. This is a huge mistake. By tightening the knot directly to the lure, you are creating a fixed pivot point. You are choking the lure and restricting its freedom of movement. A balance jig needs to be able to pivot and rock freely at the connection point to achieve its best gliding action. The solution is a loop knot. A Rapala knot or a simple surgeon's loop will create a small open loop for the lure to swing on. This gives it the unrestricted freedom it needs to dart, glide, and turn. I can tell you from experience, switching from a clinch knot to a loop knot can single-handedly increase your catch rate. It's that big of a deal. It's a 10-second change that makes a 100% difference in the lure's action. So, how do you know if you're doing it all right? The proof is in the pattern. A properly worked balance jig should not just go up and down. It should swim in a wide oval or a figure-8 pattern beneath the hole. On your flasher, you should see the lure jump up, then disappear off the edge of your sonar cone as it glides outwards, and then reappear as it glides back to the center. If you're watching your electronics and your lure is just a solid line going straight up and down, something is wrong. This is the ultimate test that connects everything we've talked about. It tells you if your sweep is too aggressive, if your line is too heavy, or if your knot is too tight. The goal is to maximize that horizontal movement. That's what calls fish in from a distance. They see that gliding, searching motion, and it triggers their predatory instinct. If it's not gliding, it's just another piece of metal, and you might as well be using a simple spoon. Another common trap is fishing in the wrong part of the water column. So many fishermen have this instinct to drop their lure straight to the bottom and just pound the mud. They think that's where the walleye live, and while fish do relate to the bottom, a balance jig is not a bottom-bouncing lure. It's a hunting lure. Its strength lies in its ability to be seen from far away. By fishing at 5, 10, or even 15 feet off the bottom, you are presenting it to a much wider audience of fish. An active walleye or a cruising perch will see that gliding motion from 20 or 30 feet away and come in to investigate. If you're glued to the bottom, you're only visible to the fish directly underneath you. Start by finding the bottom, then reel up several feet. Work that zone for a while. Then reel up another 5 feet. Hunt for the active fish. Don't just sit there waiting for a fish to swim directly under your hole. Make them come to you. Let's finally talk about the elephant in the room. Lure color. We all do it. We stand in the tackle shop for an hour, agonizing over whether to get the glow perch or the fire tiger pattern. And when the fishing is slow, what's the first thing we do? We change the lure color. Then we change it again. And again. Here's the hard truth. Color is probably the least important part of the equation. Yes, on some days, color can make a difference, but action is what triggers the strike. Profile and action come first, always. A fish is drawn in by the vibration and the gliding motion of the lure. That's what screams food. The color is just the final confirmation once they get close. If you have the wrong action, the most perfect color in the world won't get you a bite. So, instead of changing your lure color every 5 minutes, focus on changing your jigging cadence or the length of your pause. Master the action first. Once you have fish consistently coming in to look at your lure, then you can start fine-tuning the color. Are you even watching your line? Seriously, I see so many guys on the ice who are just staring off into space while they jig. They're waiting to feel that big thump on the rod. But with a balanced jig, many of your bites, especially from finicky perch or wary walleye, will not be aggressive. They often happen as the lure is falling and gliding. A fish will swim up underneath it and simply inhale it. You won't feel a thing. The only indication you'll get is that your line will suddenly go slack, or it will just jump or tick sideways. If you're not paying close attention to that little loop of line between your rod tip and the hole, you are missing half of your fish. This is called line watching, and it's a critical skill. The moment you see that line do anything unusual on the fall, set the hook. Don't wait to feel it. By the time you feel it, the fish has already spit the lure out. Your eyes are a better bite detector than your hands. Let's dig deeper into the cadence code. Most fishermen fall into a robotic, monotonous rhythm. Lift, drop, pause. Lift, drop, pause. They do the exact same thing over and over. But fish can get conditioned to this. A constant, predictable rhythm can seem unnatural. The key is to break the cadence. Think like a musician, not a metronome. Try mixing it up. Do 2 quick, short pops, then let it sit for a long pause. Then do 1 high, sweeping rip that sends the lure gliding way out, and let it settle for a full 30 seconds. Sometimes, just dead sticking it, letting it sit perfectly still for a minute or more, is what triggers the bite. You have to experiment to find what the fish want today. Their mood can change by the hour. A varied cadence mimics a real panicking baitfish much better than a repetitive robotic motion. Don't be predictable. Keep the fish guessing. Let's get into some physics. Let's talk about sound and vibration. Every time your lure moves through the water, it's creating a specific vibration, a signature that fish can detect with their lateral line. A big, aggressive rip creates a loud thump that can call in active, aggressive fish. It's like ringing a dinner bell. But what about when the fish are in a neutral or negative mood? That loud, aggressive sound might actually spook them. In those situations, a quieter, more subtle approach is needed. A short, gentle lift creates a much softer vibration, a more natural flutter. It's less intimidating. This goes back to the jackhammer mistake. By being overly aggressive, you might be scaring away more fish than you're attracting. You need to have both moves in your playbook. Pay attention to how the fish react on your flasher. If they charge in and then bolt, you're probably being too loud. Tone it down and give them a softer, more seductive presentation. The classic phrase, "match the hatch," isn't just for fly fishermen. It's critically important in ice fishing too, and people often ignore it with balance jigs. They'll just tie on their favorite big number 9 size lure no matter what. But you have to think about what the primary forage is in that body of water. Are the perch and walleye feeding on tiny 2-inch emerald shiners? If so, that giant 5-inch jig looks like a monster, not a meal. It might intimidate them. Conversely, if the main forage is larger cisco or smelt, a tiny 1-inch lure might not even get noticed. It doesn't have the right profile to draw them in. You need to have a variety of sizes in your box and be willing to change based on what you think the fish are eating. Don't just assume bigger is always better. Sometimes, downsizing your lure is the single most effective change you can make, especially on heavily pressured lakes. Now for the great debate, to tip or not to tip. Should you add a minnow head, a wax worm, or some other kind of bait to your balance jig? There are strong opinions on both sides. Here's the breakdown. Tipping the lure, usually on the bottom treble hook, adds scent and taste. This can be a huge advantage when fish are in a negative mood. It can convince a hesitant fish to commit and hold on to the lure for an extra second, giving you more time to set the hook. However, there's a major downside. Adding anything to the lure can, and often will, kill its perfectly engineered action. A big minnow head can make it unbalanced, ruining the glide. The best, purest action comes from a bare, untipped lure. So here's the rule of thumb. Start with a bare lure. If you're getting fish to come in and look but not commit, then try tipping it. Use the smallest piece of bait possible to add scent without destroying the action. Let's talk about fishing pressure. You might be doing everything perfectly. You have the right rod, the right line, the perfect cadence, but you're still not catching anything. Why? Because you're fishing in a crowd. Picture a popular community spot on a Saturday morning. There are 30 other anglers out there, and 25 of them are probably using a balance jig. The fish in that area have seen that same presentation 1,000 times. They get wise to it. They become conditioned. The balance jig is often most effective when you're hole hopping, searching for active, unpressured fish. It's a lure for hunting, not for sitting in a crowd. If you're in a popular spot and nothing is working, your best move might be to pack up, Walk a few hundred yards away from everyone else and try to find fish that haven't seen a lure all day. Sometimes the problem isn't your technique, it's your location. If you are ice fishing in the 21st century without electronics, you are fishing blind. Your flasher or sonar is your underwater eyes, and it is absolutely essential for mastering the balance jig. You shouldn't be guessing what's happening down there. On your screen, you should be able to see your lure as a solid line. You should be able to see a fish appear as another line moving towards yours. Most importantly, you get to see how the fish reacts to your presentation. Do they charge in when you do a big rip? Or do they only come in during the pause? If you see a fish come in hot and then turn away the second you jig again, that's a clear signal that your jigging is too aggressive. Your electronics give you instant feedback, allowing you to adjust your cadence and presentation in real time to match the mood of the fish. It turns a guessing game into a science. Let's get even more specific about the upward motion. We talked about the sweep, but there are two distinct variations, the snap and the lift. They create two very different actions. The snap is a short, sharp movement, done mostly with just your wrist. It's a quick pop. This causes the lure to dart out erratically and quickly with a lot of vibration. It's great for calling in aggressive fish from a distance. The lift, on the other hand, is a longer, slower, more deliberate motion using more of your forearm. It's a smoother sweep that sends the lure into a wider, slower, more graceful glide. This is a much less aggressive presentation, perfect for fish that are in a neutral or negative mood. You need to know how to do both. If the fast, erratic snap isn't working, switch to the slow, methodical lift. Having both of these tools in your arsenal allows you to adapt to any situation. We've mentioned the pause, but let's dive into the psychology of it. This is without a doubt the hardest part of the technique for most anglers to master. Our instinct is to always be doing something, to be jigging, moving, trying to make something happen. Doing nothing feels lazy. It feels unproductive. But you have to fight that instinct. You have to force yourself to pause. I mean really pause. Put your rod down on a bucket. Count to 20. Look at your flasher and watch that lure just hang there, perfectly still. Imagine you are the walleye. You saw this thing flutter and glide. It looked like a dying minnow. Now it's just hanging there, suspended, helpless. An easy meal. That is the moment the predator's brain switches from curious to attack. Mastering the pause is a mental game. It's a test of patience and discipline. The anglers who catch the most fish on balance jigs are the ones who have mastered the art of doing nothing. Let's put it all together in a real-world scenario. Picture this. You drill a fresh hole, away from the crowds. You tie on your lure, but this time, you use a loop knot. You're using a sensitive rod and light line. You drop the lure down, reel up 5 feet from the bottom. Instead of a violent jerk, you give it a smooth 1-foot sweep with your rod tip. You watch your line intently as the lure glides out of view on your flasher, and then back to the center. And then, you wait. You force yourself to do nothing. You count to 15. It feels like an eternity. Suddenly you don't feel a bite, but you see your line just jump a tiny bit. It's a sign you would have missed before. You sweep the rod for the hook set, and you feel that heavy weight. That's it. That's the difference. It wasn't one big change. It was a combination of 5 or 6 small, crucial details that turned a frustrating experience into a successful one. So, what did we learn? The reason your balance jig isn't working isn't the lure itself. It's a chain reaction of small, subtle mistakes that add up. It's the violent jackhammer jigging, the wrong rod action, the heavy line that kills the glide, the tight knot that chokes the lure, and most of all, the complete lack of patience on the pause. The biggest aha moment for most people is this. The goal of the jig isn't to attract the fish. The goal of the jig is simply to set up the fall and the pause. You're not jigging to get a bite. You're jigging to prepare for the bite that happens when you do absolutely nothing at all. That one shift in thinking changes everything. Next time you're on the ice, don't just go through the motions. Be a puppeteer. Use a loop knot. Watch your line on the fall, and learn to love the pause. I guarantee you'll stop blaming the lure and start putting more fish on the ice. Thanks for sticking with me through this deep dive. If this video opened your eyes, do me a favor and hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next video where we break down another fishing myth. Now I want to hear from you. What is the single biggest mistake you think you are making with your balance jig? Let's get a discussion going in the comments below.